So today is New Year's Eve, and I wanted to end the year with a different video talking about a decision I made. I actually had a comment from a viewer who wanted to know why I sold my 15mm Sony G lens when I was speaking so highly of it in the 15mm review, and then in my 11mm review I actually revealed that I returned the lens, got rid of it, and you wanted to know why. And it's actually not very simple. It's a little bit more complicated than I thought. The 11mm was better than the 15mm. It actually has to do with what's been going on here at Reach Films. I ended up getting a contract to do a lot of apartment buildings here in downtown Fort Lauderdale and North Miami, and filming apartment complexes, you know, the apartments are typically not the biggest spaces, especially when shooting in downtown areas. So from my experience, when shooting on crop sensor, 11mm is almost needed because that's about as wide as you can go. So when I got that contract, I knew that the 15mm was just not going to completely cut it for that work. But what I ended up doing was I shot that 11mm versus 15mm review when doing that job, or at least the very first gig I had with them. And you can take a look at that video. I have it on here on the channel. And after doing it, I realized that for that specific gig, I'm gonna need the 11mm. Now, the reason I sold the 15mm is it's the holiday season. Amazon does extended returns, and the Sony FX30, although I've been using it a lot, it's been my primary camera lately, I still use my RED Komodo a lot, which is an RF mount camera, and I still use the R7 a lot, which is also an RF mount camera. So most of my lenses that I own are RF mount lenses, which means that the 15 and the 11mm were my only Sony E mount lenses, where for a lot of my more professional work, when I'm using the Sony FX30, I'm adapting glass that I've had that I use on my RED Komodo, my R7, and that's all Sigma art glass. And with Sigma's MC11, it works great. The autofocus works pretty decent. The main drawback is that it's a lot heavier, at least the Sigma art lenses are a lot heavier. And then on top of that, the autofocus on the MC11 adapter really only works well with the Sigma art lenses. So I made the decision to get rid of the 15mm, just number one, because of cost. I couldn't really afford to have two Sony E mount lenses on a secondary system that isn't necessarily what I use the most, although again, I was using it the most in November and December. And then there's the fact that the Sigma art lenses covered what the 15mm would cover, although I'd have to use a much heavier gimbal like the RS2. I'm kind of used to that. So I figured I would take the gamble, I would return the 15mm and keep the 11mm. It's been about 3 weeks since I've returned the 15mm, and I don't necessarily completely regret it, although there's been a few events I've shot that using that 15mm would have helped because of its less distortion from the 11mm. But in the end, I needed the 11mm the most, and for Reach Films as a business, it made the most sense to use that lens. So that's why I stuck with the 11mm. I don't think the 15mm is a bad lens at all. I think if you have the budget to go for the 15mm and you don't shoot real estate, or you don't need that super wide field of view, just like I said in my 11mm review, I think the 15mm is going to be a great choice for you. I just think it's priced a little bit higher than the 11mm for what I need the FX30 for filming these real estate videos on this Zhiyun Crane M2s. The 11mm just seemed to be the best pair. I think if I was shooting mostly weddings, events, and I wasn't shooting real estate, then the 15mm would have made a lot more sense to keep. However, I only do a few weddings a year, so it just didn't make complete sense. And then the kicker to all of that was I have a really big gig coming up at the end of January where I needed to end up buying another Suri anamorphic lens. And the price of that anamorphic lens was definitely more than the 15mm from Sony. So I kind of weighed out my options and decided that I'd rather get the money back for the Sony, put that towards my Suri anamorphic, so I can come out with this short film that you all will see in the channel probably within February, March of 2023. It's going to be really cool, much higher budget than I'm used to doing. And I can't wait to show you all. It'll be, you know, filmed on the affordable Suri anamorphics, but on the RED Komodo. So stay tuned. I'll put a link to it when I come out with it. So a side note, in today's video, I've most likely been using DaVinci voice isolation for most of the audio recording. And the reason being is, number one, it works really well. As you can see, here is without voice isolation. You probably hear a little bit of wind, a little bit of cars in the background. And then here's with voice isolation on. And as you can see, Definitely isolates my voice a lot better, especially that I could do as a non-audio engineer in post. It gets rid of a lot of the background noise, isolates your voice, and actually sounds pretty decent. This year has been really wild here at Reach Films, and I really enjoyed the journey that I've taken on with you, so I want to thank you for coming on this journey with me. I want to wish you a happy, healthy new year. This is going to be the last video of this year. Obviously, it's here on the 31st, so I will see you with a fresh video next week with the FX6 versus the FX30. That was a really fun video to do, and I can't wait to show you all. So until next time, my name's Geoff Fagien. Have a happy and healthy new year, and I'll see you in 2023.